Okay, today we're going to look at making an environment for your map, and we'll do it from scratch. So when you create a map, generally you start with no sky, no haze, no moon, no real light conditions. And we want to customize everything to make our map situation just the way we want it. So if we're going to be moving forward through the map straight up like that, our main camera situation is going to be looking in this direction for almost the entire scenario. So we want to make things look good from this direction, from from say 80 degrees in this direction should, for the most part, work for this map. We care what it looks like from this direction, but it's not going to be our main focus. We're going to optimize for this direction. So let's get rolling here and go to the F6 tab, the Environment tab. And first thing we want to do is drop in a sky. So you'll see on this side, I've opened up many of these submenus. So if you click Light, it opens up to a whole bunch of more tabs here. So a lot of these already been opened up. Yours may be all closed and you have to open these to see it. And you can, once you make an environment, you can save, as I've saved hundreds or a lot of my custom environments. Because light and your environment is so important for your map to look good. Everything from bright daylight to moonlit night map, it really makes a difference. And sound is also included in this, in your environment. So we'll get into all of that. So for this first environment video, we're going to look at the basics. Let's create the sky. So we go to the sky tab here, enable that. You still won't see the sky because we have to drop in a texture. So click the texture button, double click on that. And you might start with something that looks like this, or maybe even up another notch. And so you need to know to start, to get there, double hit texture, go to common, then go to environment, and then you start to have our sky textures available. Default sky, clouds, day. These are the main ones used, and there may be some others down here, but generally those are the ones used for sky. Sun and moon, those are the textures used for the sun and moon, and we'll talk about that. But these are your cloud environments. So as a default sky, let's start with maybe this one. Hit OK. Now it still looks black and dark here in the horizon. That's because the haze hasn't been dealt with, and that's the default black haze. But we do have our sky in, and we have some nice clouds working here. So let's stay in the direction that we're facing here and attack the haze next. So to see the rest of our clouds and sky, we need to go to the haze tab here. We have to enable it, and that will be turned on a really bright default haze once we turn this tab on. Now that's too much haze, but at least now we can see that the rest of our clouds. All right. So what we want to do is, we still want haze and to get rid of that black, but we want to turn that down for now, and we're going to return to the haze tab because there's a lot of good information in here. But right now the haze doesn't even start. Well, first of all, you need to know that haze is attached to the camera. It moves with the camera. It's not a static thing. That's why we have some numbers here to understand how that works. Haze is right now it ends at 10,000 meters. That may or not be your default. Usually the default is 5,000, so let's double click. That might be the default you start with, and hit return. And that will turn off your F6 tab though. So, but just hit F6 again. So now haze is at 5,000, which means it ends a lot, it ends closer to the camera, which means the entire amount of haze is compressed closer to the camera, and it gives too much haze. So that's why I had it at 10,000. So let's switch that back to even more. Let's go 12,000. So that takes your haze farther out. And if I just click off of it, then the tab won't close. So now move your map and then the haze kicks in. Sometimes you won't see your change here until you go back on your map and move it and kicks in the haze to be correct. So now we still have our haze, but it goes all the way to 12,000 meters into the distance, which means it's a lot thinner haze and a less dramatic effect, and that's what we want for today. You can use haze for a very smoky, cloudy battle scene where you have wind and smoke and haze all working together for a really great atmosphere, but that's for another video. So our haze ends at 12,000 meters far away, and it doesn't even start till 1,500 meters. So that means I don't have any haze 1,500 meters from the camera here up to, say, where this brick is, or somewhere about 1,500 game meters. Haze doesn't even kick in. But if I change that to 0, you'll see a bit of haze move a little bit closer to the camera, as you just seen. So the haze now was allowed to, a small bit of haze was allowed to start right at the camera, which sometimes you want that look, sometimes you don't, but that's what those numbers mean. If I go back and say, okay, the haze isn't even going to start for 3,000 meters, you'll see the effect as I clicked on there. So there's no haze right up until about the church. Then haze starts to kick in to 12,000 meters past the church. So there's no haze from me immediately here in this little farm all the way to the church. Haze isn't even an issue. But we want a little haze there too. So let's take it back to, say, 1,000 or 1,200 and click off. And now we do have a little haze between us and the church just to give us an effect. So that's the main part about haze as far as distance is concerned. Haze comes into play again when we get into colors. The color of the haze is very important. And if you double click on this, you get an interface which will change the color of the haze. And we're not going to mess with that right now. That'll be for an advanced video on environment. But we'll click off of there. So you can change your haze color to match your scene. You may have a very cold scene where it's winter and the overall theme is cold and blue light. And so your haze, you want to make it a little bit colder temperature too. But right now, we have our sky in, we have our haze under control. And now let's deal with the direction of the clouds. If I look around, I see, wow, there's no nice clouds behind the house. It's more clear. What if I want that clear sky to be over the town here? How could I move the clouds around and have control over where the clouds are? That's easily done. So you go back to the sky tab here. And under the global environment, you can change, azimuth will change the direction of the cloud. So by default, it should be 0. And now we can see that our clouds have gone from over the town to probably somewhere behind us, more to the left. That's where the clouds are now. But say we want them back over the town, then we simply have to, if I get my camera straightened out here, we simply have to move them with the azimuth. So we put in a number here. So for the clouds to spin around the scene once completely, I believe it's 360 degrees for a full circle around. So if I was to go 180, the cloud should be over here, right across. If I go 90 as a number, they should be either over the town or behind me. Let's try that. So 90 degrees, hit OK. Now where are the clouds? Yeah, they're right over the town, roughly. So it's the 360 degrees number that you use here in this box to move the clouds wherever you want. Like I say, if I want them behind me now, I'd probably put in 180. So that would be a 180 move. And they should be somewhat behind. Let's see if that worked. Where are we here? No, that didn't click in. So let's go 180, hit return, back to F6, and the cloud should be somewhat behind us, yeah. So generally that works. 360 degrees will control where your clouds are. So let's put that back to 0 and add 90 to get them over the town, because that looks best, I think. So yeah, so right now we have nice cloud over the town. And if you want to get your camera to be able to have it move, as the default is usually clipped, so you're not able to move your camera past the default. I can't zoom out any further, and I can't go underneath, tilt up anymore. If you want to have more control over your camera as you're making your environments, go to F2, and up here there's a little clip camera position. Turn that off. Now I can zoom out a lot further, and I can go underneath the ground, and I can see my environment better from a long distance. So that gives you better control when you're making your environments. Alright, so now we decided where what our sky is, where our clouds, where we want them to be, and we have our basic control over our haze. Now I want to decide where the sun's coming from and what direction and how bright it is. So let's go to the top here, to the light tab. Under direction, double click this number in your direction tab, this interface here, or you can click here, which gives you this interface, direction of your sunlight. If right now, if I click in the middle, the sun's straight down, and watch the shadows on the barn and the buildings. You'll see that the sun is straight up and down now. Now is to the side, which means strong shadows and light from the side. And now to the right side and straight in front of us. Now the sun is coming up from where the bell tower is. That's or opposite of that, I should say. And now it's coming from where the bell tower is. The sun would actually be behind, just above the bell tower in the church. So let's just try that. It should be fairly about there, but you don't see it yet. So let's just click it there, off on that. And now we have to tell the program on this interface here to actually draw a sun and moon in. So let's turn that on. Let's tilt up, and we see there's the sun right over the bell tower, like I said. Now, that's if you want to be fighting straight into the sunlight. Generally, you're going to want to mess around with the direction of the light for the best, how to make your soldiers and equipment and houses look the best for your particular scene. But that's how you draw in the sun and the moon. That corresponds to the direction of your light. So double click back on your light interface, and if I move this even down further, like right to the edge, that will take your sun right, like it's rising over the town. And that could be used for some effect if you want to go that way. You could change your haze and fog to match, bring in some heavy clouds or different clouds, sky textures, and make it look like a sunrise over the town. But that's how you have control of your sun and your moon. And if you had a night scene, this would be a moon, not a sun. So you can have control of where your light's coming from. So generally, as a rule, you want to make your equipment, houses, and land look really good with where your sun is. So you want some shadow. Direct sunlight doesn't look good in movies, and it doesn't look good on CGI maps either. So you want to control your light almost like you were lighting a little movie. So let's move the light to the side. That gives us a nice shadow, which adds to the look of our town. And let's click OK for now. So now the sun should be just above where we can see it on our camera. And if we confirm it by looking where the shadow is, it should be just above up there. So the sun is shining down in this direction and creating a shadow here. And that's fine for now. There are some textures that have sunlight built in, like rocks. If I zoom right into, say, a certain texture that already has light built into it, like these stamps over here, they were created with light coming from this direction. You can see the light on this rock. This is actually just a stamp. So in F2, I can click it and move it. And you can see this is actually a photograph of dirt, or was created from some kind of texture of dirt, which the sun was shining from this direction. As you can see on this pebble, this rock has sun on this side and shadow on this side. So if you're using a lot of rock textures, simply match up the sun direction with the sun direction of your photograph of the textures, and that adds to the realism. That way, when you're putting all your rock stamps down, they'll match up with where your sun is in your scene, and that actually adds to making a more realistic environment. All right, so having said all this, let's zoom out a little bit more here. We have our general sun, sky, and haze set up. We can now start to look at other things that we may want to change. The ambient is the amount of ambient light in the scene, and if you click on where this number here, you get this interface. And if you start with the light and the dark, you can move that up and down, and that will decide how deep your shadows are going to be and how much ambient light. So if you want it to be more of a general light, you might want to crank that up a little bit. This is more for fine-tuning. I would leave it on default for now. When you start to make a dark night map or something, you can come back and start to fine-tune your ambient light. But for now, let's cancel that, and let's go to diffuse light. Same thing here. It's more of general light in the scene, and it really, you can strengthen your shadow again, or you can lessen it. So instead of direct light, this is more of a diffuse light. So again, let's click off of that. So ambient and diffuse aren't directional light. They don't make shadows. Your directional light is where your shadows come from. And we'll skip specular for now. Light intensity, if we click on this here, that is how bright your lights will be, how bright fire will be, how, like if you have a fire going here, or one of those barrels that are lit up and soldiers are warming their hands around it, that light source, this number here determines how bright the lights are in the game. Explosions, light, fire. If this number is really high, explosive light would be very bright. So in this map, this one's default. Usually I like about, double click on it, I like about, I think it's 0.17, something like that. But you can mess around with that number. But that's what light intensity does. The intensity of light in the scene, fires, explosions. Night is when you turn this on, you will have different options as far as sounds. The town lights, lamps will turn on as they have here, but it's a bright day, so you don't see them very much, but you can see the glow around the lamps right now. When you turn that off, it goes back into day mode and they turn off. And so that's kind of what happens there. A few other things occur. I think spotting distances change, but for right now, let's continue on. You can change the radius and size of the moon. Probably don't even want to mess around with that. Night vision amount, that's that number where, spotting distance. Color correction, very important when we go into advanced environment creation. You may, like I said before, want to do a very cold night scene where your light is going to be more cold and blue. So you want to be able to control the tone of your light, the brightness. The contrast is a big one. In the next video, there's a lot of information in the contrast, the brightness and saturation, and the tone. A lot of great information I'll do in the next video about that. And there's a lot of other things like the wind, the speed of the wind, which causes your trees to move. But not only that, your wind speed and amplitude actually determines if there's a blown up tank here, that smoke is going to blow across the battlefield and it will affect gameplay. So if you have several tanks destroyed and that black smoke is blowing this way across the battlefield, you want to control how smoke blows around on your maps. And wind determines how that all works. So stay tuned for the next video where we'll go into part 2 on environment creation.